Yeah, come in, please. Join to the circle. We're going to begin the feedback cafe. This is for you. We're going to begin with your performance. Okay. Welcome. Okay, so let's begin while the people join our circle. Okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. This is the third session of this Feedback Cafe. And as we usually do, we're going to comment the shows we saw yesterday on the main program, plus the show the site-specific show and the visual artist project that are together. That's, wait a moment. That's Kristina Cranfeld and Foolish People with British Enough, and that will be after the talking about the other fourth shows. And yeah, so let's begin then with the first show we saw yesterday. Here we have them. That's Legend from Romain Toel. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that all right, but it's not the main point. So could you please make an introduction or say whatever you want to say about yourself or the company or the show or whatever, and then we'll open the discussion for the rest of the people.
Okay. So I'm Romain Toel, and I'm French, and I work between France and Portugal. And the show I presented yesterday was originally performed in Portuguese, and it was the first time I presented in English yesterday. So in the show, with me there is Lucy also, which is one of the persons that worked on the project. So on the project I worked, I think there is 4 persons that were involved, like Jamie Allen that did the translation, helped me on the translation from Portuguese to English, Ines Campos that helped me for dramaturgical specific points, and Lucy that is more like a dialogue since the beginning of the project, and that helped me on the every state of the layers of the project. So Legend is a piece that started by this question, which is what does exist between a translation and the object where these translations come from. So what is there in this space between these two translations and between languages? And this is how I entered in the project, like looking for a to materialize this space of that's it. The space between, the space between.
Super. Thank you. Is there anyone wanting to say any comments, any feedback, any questions, whatever, to Romain, please? Yeah, I'm aware. There's a lot of people here who couldn't see the show anywhere. But there is people who saw the show, yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed the show, and congratulations. I just wanted to ask about the movement at the beginning, how very whimsical and...
The what, sorry?
The movement, the dance at the beginning, quite whimsical. How did you, was that connected with the aspect of bird watching, or did that just come naturally, or, because it's a very specific section at the beginning where you come on?
For me, it's like really like an introduction. It's more like listening, like to install, because I like to play also with several layers. So I wanted to install something more like poetic with like a landscape, something really, like performatively creating a landscape and things around in the stage, and after breaking it, going like in a posture more like yeah, a conference or a lecture or something. But for me, it's important because it gives also, yeah, there is this thing of the listening and the being in the space, being with these birds, and that's it, yeah.
How long did it take to decide when working in English and exactly how the language would change in terms of like the term of birds to burst, which is quite funny. How long did that take you to develop?
I think the first bit of the piece was translated in 2 days, like or 1 day. It worked like I do the first translation, which is the translation of the subtitles, and then Jamie will correct it, do it in proper English, and after he will do the bird, like the translation of the word I say. And for that, I work with him also to check if what we can. Because from the beginning, we birds could be like burps or whatever. Burps, yeah, it's funny, but maybe we need something else, not to be just like so. Burst sounds more, yeah, less. I don't know what to say. Yeah, for me it was more subtle than burps. Just, yeah, that's it.
Is there anyone else wanting to say something? Any feedbacks, any comments? No?
I really found it unique. Found it really a unique experience to watch you and listen to this game with language. And it just made me think a lot about how the tiny little details of sounds in our languages and our mouths and the little tiny shifts, how it changes a whole situation, how it changes a whole relationship or a reality. So there was a nice feeling of being always on the edge of falling into another reality, and I don't know, it's hard to articulate it, but I think you made me see how fragile everything that we think of as solid actually is. You know, we're always so close to a different version of the world or what we want to say. So, yeah, I really enjoyed that.
Thanks.
I felt primed at a certain point to understand things that I wanted to see and hear. So I was sat in front of a Japanese colleague of mine, and when I don't know, it was just before Hiroshima. It was just before Hiroshima, I started hearing chopsticks, and I started hearing an Asian accent, and that was really, really funny. Also, my colleagues mentioned to me, because English is my first language, that to them it was also a bit weird that I was cracking up so much, because it's when somebody messes with your first language in that way, it becomes really, really absurd. And also at the same time, I felt like I was learning something new again, like reading the word of the god Zeus. Then in German we pronounce Zeus. I already found myself anticipating the Zeus, so it was like those chain jokes that start at one point and then they go on and on and on, and then they stop, and then they continue again. So that was really nice.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I haven't really properly formulated it in my head what I'm going to try and say, but I'll try. Like, well done, firstly. It was really cool. But there was something that I thought I was waiting to happen that I'm not sure if it did, or maybe it just didn't happen to me, which was this thing of when you speak it, I suppose the game is like you speak it and we see it on the screen, and we see what you're doing because of the words that we see on the screen, do you know? And I wondered if, when you say the words, if we could hear what you were trying to say whilst you used the wrong words for it without using the screen. I wondered if you thought that was possible.
You mean to be able to speak this language without subtitles and being understood?
Yeah. Or if that was, maybe that's not a want for you to do.
First, is the first time today I received, someone's told me she could follow the piece without reading the subtitles and understanding what I was saying. And I was like, oh, great. Yeah. First time happened. And I think there is a part where I speak on top of this image of the drone, where there is no subtitles. And maybe it's because I'm saying stuff that I don't want to be understood.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
so if you are trained enough, you can understand what I'm saying. But if you don't catch it, it's censored. And for me, there is, I don't know if there was a point to make it understandable without subtitle. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. I suppose, yeah, for me, I was excited by that thought of you using the method that you do, using the wrong words, and me recognizing that you're using the wrong words, but then also building a picture of something else as well. That felt quite exciting. So.
Anyone else? I can join the feedback. I enjoy a lot your show. I will say my personal feedback, and then I will because I'm reading the feedback postcards every day, so I know a little bit more or less what the audience generally said about your show, and I may be using one of these arguments. But I like it a lot, and I think I agree quite a lot with Mike with the idea he was saying that it show how we have nothing safe if we cannot understand. And that's I think it's one of these philosophical problems that connects with everything. Like talking about this little subject, you talk about everything, and it's like it's like the reason why Plato, refused. I mean, when he knew his theory was not working, as he tried to organize the world, because every theoretical construction doesn't work. At the end, he said, yeah, maybe it doesn't work, but we have to accept this artificial construction of the world, because in other case, we cannot be sure we are understanding each other when we talk. And if we can do that, we cannot build any kind of organized society or whatever. For he was the absolute chaos. And I think that's very beautiful, and it connects with what you say. So I think that's a very, very important topic. And I think it's great when you present a very profound and important topic in a very playful way. When it's something very clever, but also mixed with some good feeling of silliness. Also, with all that, it makes things even more beautiful and metaphoric. So I wanted to say you that, and also to add an additional effect you make on the people that are not they have not English as the first language. So it happened to me. In one moment, it was impossible for me to get everything. To get the two different lines, to read the thing, and then to try to get your speech and to make the connections. So in that case, I have an overloaded experience in my brain. You feel the limits of your brain. I cannot get all of this, and I like that very much. I like using that even in theater. I think it's a good feeling to put inside the audience brains, and I like that very much. I don't know if it's happening to an English speaker. Maybe someone can answer, but for a non-native English speaker, it's and also I think it's super clear. We have to congratulate you for the work with the English language, which is super. I imagine myself doing that in English. It's wow, really. And then, taking already the comments from the feedback postcards, there is one thing that appears there's of course people liking the show, saying it's genial, and people don't like in the show anyone, but that's fine. But I think something quite it was repeated 3-4 times, people saying, I like very much the idea, but feeling that the idea needed more development. I don't think personally it needed more development, but I want just to ask you, in the name of these people, do you think it needs more development, or I think it can be an interesting topic. It's a simple idea. Does it need more development or not? It's just the presentation.
I think I could go on, yes, for sure, but I could do that with a lot of projects, and there is a moment I need to choose, like, no, I should accept it's the point I arrived, and there will be further project where I will develop maybe, and there is little details maybe that could be developed in other ideas. I try not to put everything also in one project. What I feel maybe is like at the end there is maybe a twist that can happen, that I started with like putting other things on screen like colors or yeah, and speaking about clouds and gray, so the clouds and blah, blah, blah. And maybe there is something that I could take from that to give another end or another moment of the piece to. So yeah, maybe it's possible. Let's see.
Yeah,
I don't have a precise answer.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't need a precise answer as well, I think. Anyway. So, but does anyone have anything else to say about the? Yeah.
Why not? Yeah, I really loved it. I was at first I was skeptical because the joke, everybody gets the joke quite quickly, and I thought, how long before the joke gets tired? But you managed to kind of twist it and make it reveal other things. So, hats off to you for that. I wondered, because it relies on humour so much and it relies on language, and if there were any particular British, English comedians or comedy or humour that you would maybe look towards for that particular aspect of the work, that influenced or not, or that you're just interested in?
I'm not sure I understood the question, but you're asking if there is British works that I'm influenced by?
Yeah.
So maybe it's a classic, but I think I really like British humor, like from Monty Python was this kind of, and yeah, for me it's something which is present without being present when I'm working. Yeah, maybe them. Yeah, that's it.
It was just because it relies so much on wordplay and humour, and within it some very kind of English wordplay. So you know, like I'm really terrible at other languages. So even understanding other humour in other languages, I'd struggle with. So it's interesting that you, for me, a native English speaker, you got that, and that was just interesting.
It's funny this idea, because I remember when I arrived in Portugal to live, I found really difficult to laugh, because I found like how laugh is really linked to the culture, and so maybe, and my work on languages started also when I was living in Lisbon, and to work between languages and that. No, so thanks, saying I managed to, yeah. And,
okay. Is there anyone wanting to say anything else on the first show? Okay, thank you very much for your yeah. And then we move on to the second show. We have it here, just next to me. And that's Kulunka Company, so, and Solitudines. So, yeah, could you please?
Okay. Hello, we are Kulunka Theatre Company. He's Jose, Edu, Iñaki, and Garbiñe. Solitude is our second show with full masks and no dialogue. The original length of the show is 1 hour 25 minutes, so our biggest challenge coming to the BFest was to make this short version, to decide what to keep and what not to keep, because we still wanted to tell a story, we still wanted to make an understandable story to the audience. So that was our biggest challenge and our worry. So I don't know if you have any question, any comment you want to share with us.
Hello. I really liked the show, and I love that it's very universal and that's accessible for anybody to understand, that it's touching for anybody. And the physicality of it, I don't know, I just wanted to let you know that I really enjoyed it and that I like the kind of theater that's able to reach a huge amount of people and affect people in a large scale and so deeply as well, because it was very moving in a very simple way.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I think it was also interesting, the reaction afterwards. A lot of people saying, oh, I don't really get to see much plays with stories and with full-on masks, and we never get to really see things like this as much. And it's true, since the beginning of B-Fest, we haven't really seen plays like yours that focuses so much on storyline. Is that something that you understand, or that you, as a company, is that something that's difficult maybe sometimes to fit into a kind of like a contemporary theater scene that is very much moving away from narratives and moving? What is your kind of ideas behind that?
I think that absolutely that's the most important part of the work, to find the story that we really want to tell. More than the physical skills, or more than the style, or more than other things, the heart of, and the most important part of the work is the writing. How to search and decide the actions and the scenes that they're going to tell the story that we really want to tell. It's more or less like that.
About the other comment that you did, it's true that maybe we are a little bit conservative regarding to the other proposals that are also very interesting. This is our way of working. We enjoy when we tell stories where everybody can feel identified, or can understand it and can follow us. And we don't think too much if it's not very contemporary or modern or fits to the market. Or we don't mind. We try to do what we feel close to us, what we want to tell, what we want to share, and this is what we can give.
I would love to know what's your inspiration for playing with these ideas of loss, decay, loneliness, because I think it's not easy to demonstrate or to display it. My vocabulary is not so huge for that. And I was a little bit reminded of Michael Haneke and his films with Liebe, love, maybe in English, the translation.
Or Amor.
Amor, yeah. And so it reminded me of something like this, an inspiration, how to show it on stage.
This is very curious, because when we made André and Doreen in 2010, the first show, the first mask show that we came in at B Festival. 2012 is Amour, and this first show also people remind, no, make the association with the film. I think it's in the universe of loneliness, all people, humanity. When you are in the similar places with a lot of artists, maybe it's a good way, you know. I feel very nice to be close to Michael Haneke. And I want to say something first. The inspiration with this show was ¿cómo se dice un fracaso? A failure. When we made Andrea and Doreen, we tried to make a second show, and we tried to talk about something I don't know, maybe so far from us, and about things, social, economics, and we tried, and we make the failure to make a story that we made all the story with the sets, with the light, with the sound, everything, 1 hour, 20 minutes. Good for me, you know. And people didn't understand the story. Didn't understand the relationship between the characters, and for us it was a big shock, but a very good experience. Because of that, there is one thing we take from this show, from one character, and is this solitude. And we make another show completely different, just with the same set, because it was very expensive. So, and we try to found the story that we really need and want to tell. No, sometimes talk about big things that you think you have to tell about this, but maybe you have nothing to say. So we find this way, and we found this solitude finally. My English is very bad. I'm very sorry.
No, it's perfect. Hello. I think you have so much skill and so much amazing skill with detail to make these masks come to life, and that the old man mask particularly and his character just felt so full, and that we saw him go on such a journey, and it's amazing. I really appreciate that. There were 3 things within the story that I found that I was uncertain about or found a little bit problematic. And therefore, the overall feeling was less powerful than it might have been. So those 3 things were the very comic nature of her death, which I think I understand the thinking behind that, changing the atmosphere from comedy to tragedy, but for me maybe felt a bit too like a cartoon or something. The second thing, and I wonder maybe this is because you had to make the piece shorter, but I felt like the son was a very strong villain, that I found him quite unsympathetic, and that maybe that was perhaps less three-dimensional because it was shorter. And then the third thing is the character of the restaurant delivery person, where I felt a bit uncomfortable with the cultural stereotype of the way that she greets people. And I wonder whether that's maybe something that we in the UK are more sensitive to than in some countries, or whether I'm just hypersensitive myself. But I've heard a few other people mention it, and I think it turned some of the audience against the piece at that moment. Just that little moment. So those are my 3 small critiques, really, of a very strong piece.
Thank you so much, Mike. Well, the decision to make the short version, we knew that we were taking risks. So we have spent a lot of time trying to create the long version, much more than with Andrandurin. It was much more difficult, as Jose said. And, we don't know why. It's not a conscious decision. But it's true that in Solitudes, as a difference with Andrandurin, the humor is different. In Andrandurin, the humor is more blank, and in Solitudes, it's more black. It's true that in this version, it's only this first gag, but during the whole performance in Solitudes, this kind of humor is appearing more times. We have a scene after the death of the wife, and how the ashes appear, it's very different. The whole family, it's in the street trying to throw away to the sea the ashes, and there is a very comic situation of black humor. So we have much more moments that we couldn't keep in this salvation. It's not an excuse, it's just to explain about the things that you were telling. Also with the delivery food. In the long version, there is more times with delivery food. It's a pizza guy trying pizza, and then this China food, and so on. And the third, the sun, about the sun. Of course, the sun, it's probably the character that we caught more in this version, and we are only showing one face. But he's really worried and stressful with his job, his daughter, and many other situations that he has to deal with, and also with the situation of the father. But in this version, probably is the character with the worst part.
In what we care a lot in the long version, that the family of this guy was not the family of $1 Million Baby. Do you know the movie of Clint Eastwood, where the family is very terrible? And no, and in the short version, the problem is we can only focus on the character of the grandfather. And it's true that the son, in one scene, it's too much information. But in the long version, I think you understand that he also has his solitude. He's in a point that it's very under pressure. So to understand why he cannot see what his grandfather really needs and know what he thinks he has to do. No? So is that the pity? For the stereotype of the China, I think it's a good subject, because we can talk about this. I think it's interesting because we work with a stereotype. Because who bring the Chinese food to a house? For us, it's a Chinese. And if you work with masks, you have to explain that this guy who bring the food, a delivery food, is a Chinese. It's really more difficult to just put one Chinese. And I don't think it's more, the racist is not the word, because my English, to this kind of wealth, how you say, sorry, mi English. Sometimes, maybe when we think too much when we are very afraid of the stereotype, you make the adverse, you know, because there's nothing wrong that in Chinese people bring Chinese food to a house.
Can I?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, the way I experienced it, it's very subtle, these things, but for me it's about the choice of the greeting that just pushes it slightly into a place where I felt uncomfortable.
Yes, maybe, yes. For that, it's the way to play it. Maybe it's too much
easy in the explication of this is a Chinese, she moves like a Chinese. That's okay. That I understand.
Sorry, just one more question. I absolutely loved your show. Thank you very much. It was very emotional, and I actually, different people, different experiences. I actually really enjoyed the humor, and I absolutely can see, that in the longer version. I would love to actually see the longer version. My question is because the masks are such a crucial part of the work, with your amazing ability to physically blend with that. I'm kind of more interested in how you actually develop these two parts of the show, how you develop the masks that are so speaking for themselves with the physicality and with the story. Where do you start? How you actually create the mask to really be so organic?
You mentioned there are two parts, but we work all together. I mean, when...
Sorry, we work all together, but she make the mask.
Well, but, the process of our shows we are 3 actors, 1 director and 1 assistant director. We start from the zero to build the story between 5 of us. And usually the masks arrives the first week. We start working with masks from the very beginning. We never start working with our faces. And we build little by little, each moment, each action. We don't focus so much into the physicality of the characters. I mean, it comes with the story. We are not coming from Jacques Lecoq school, or we did the Royal School of Art but we didn't have a specific background in masks theater. This is our second show, but when we did our first show, we didn't know anything about masks. So we have learned it while we were searching. And this is our way to search.
Thanks. Sorry. Yeah, this is because you mentioned a few times about it being a shortened version, and this is a question for yourselves and for any of the artists, performers. Really, is how much do you feel when you have to reduce something that you've really constructed for a certain length of time, and you have to reduce that? How much do you feel that compromises your work?
Yeah, it's hard. It's like cutting an arm to your son or something. It's yeah, because you know that you are losing, and we even felt yesterday that some scenes that in our original version are very strong because of the accumulation of the story, didn't work the same way. It's normal because you don't have this accumulation of you don't know the characters so much, and so yeah, it's hard. We decided to come here, and this is what we have been able to show. But
also, we realized that with our first show, to make the shorter version, it was easier, and the short version worked quite good. Maybe with this one, it's not working that good, or not. We were thinking about that. Maybe it wasn't so. It was more difficult this time, or maybe this story is not that easy to make a short version than the first one. But we didn't know it at the beginning. Yeah, this second story, it's much. We are performing with 17 masks, 15 different characters, and we have more plots during the performance. With Andrea Dorin it's easier. We have just the main plot, and then we don't have so many characters, and we don't have so many masks. So maybe here with this one the challenge is more difficult.
I thought it was just a really beautifully crafted story, and I thought it had an incredible amount of heart, and so well done for that, because I don't think that's easy to do at all.
Thank you.
I want to touch on some points Mike made, because I thought they were really good. I felt quite similar about the Asian person who delivered the food. And again, about the gesture. It was the gesture. I ended up forgiving it, because I kind of thought, because you're using mask, like you said, you were trying to get something across, but for me, it maybe wasn't needed, just because we see the mask and we get it. But also, oh yeah.
No, yeah, just to answer. I agree with that. For that, and it's nice to hear it, because when you are doing this kind of language, the doubt you always have, because we work to make all the story understandable and all the character understandable, and sometimes what is very difficult to put the limit and how much you need to explain.
Yeah.
Or you can trust in what you have, and maybe you don't need more. And there is a lot of digitalization in this kind, and I'm sure that because we are always working on this. We are Andrea and Doreen. We have played 400 times, and we're still changing things like that, because this test that. We discovered that maybe we don't need, maybe because with the Chinese, with the dress and the mask, we didn't trust too much if it's understandable that it's a Chinese food, and so that we put and but it's good to listen to it, because maybe we didn't need it, and if we didn't need it, it's better to cut.
Yeah. But and one more thing, which was about the son, which I actually really enjoyed how flawed he was as a character. I really thought that was really nice to see the complexities of this son, who's making some terrible decisions. But for me, it was like, yeah, I really got the position he was in, and that he was just making, in a place where he was just making really poor decisions. And I thought that gave it a real depth that was really brilliant, and that really, I felt very, got me emotionally because of his decisions. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a very important part of the work. We try always to put on the shoes of each character. To try to understand why is he or she doing this incredible thing or understandable thing in this moment, because all of them are doing that most of the time. So we need to put a lot of actions, details to can feel it, and to make that understandable. Yeah. And the last thing with this short, sometimes we need a new character, to appear just 15 seconds. So it's because of that many times we use the cliché, because with the view, you are going to understand he's a prostitute, he's a priest, he's a delivery guy, or But it's good to know that maybe you don't need to do anything more, just the image to understand everything. So in that case, the action, we need to give it away. So it's good to think about it.
And always that you work with cliché, you are in front of the stereotype, no? And it's two things different. Cliché is not necessarily bad. But if you make the stereotype, or if you make a joke about the stereotype, or maybe it's cross the line. No?
For us, it's really helpful.
Yes, and for us, it's very helpful to listen to it.
Last comment for this show.
Fantastic show, absolutely amazing. I was practically reduced to tears because I've been through something like that with my dad a few years ago. And so I recognise a lot of things about myself as the son, everything. So it was just amazing, yeah. But unfortunately, I was in tears virtually halfway through, and I haven't quite cried for quite a while. But yeah, it really brought it home to me on a personal level. Fantastic. Carry on, keep up the good work.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Kulunka Company and the rest of the people. So let's move on to the third show we saw yesterday. That's Betelgeuse, Kiomos Kinetai. I don't know if I pronounce it fine. So, yeah, you have already a microphone. So could you please introduce yourselves and say something about your show, your company, whatever you want?
Hello. First of all, Kiomos Kinite, it's a Greek, the name of the group. In Latin is Purse Move, is the name, Galileo, when the Earth was turning, he said Purse Move. This is the name of the group. I mean, it's a collective, it's a work that we do all together. All together, we are many more than this. But now in this case, this for the group.
Could you please put the microphone closer to your mouth? Sorry.
Yeah. Now, Betelgeuse is the name of the star. Well, Betelgeuse is a piece that has presented in Athens in the year of the crisis, when they told us that a big catastrophe will come. Something super terrible will happen, and we are like expecting the end of the world, something like this. And in the same time, I read in the newspaper that a star named Betelgeuse, it will explode, maybe. Oh, sorry, English.
Don't worry.
Yeah. That the star Betelgeuse maybe had exploded, and we will see the information now, or maybe it will explode right now that we're speaking. We will see the information after, when the light comes here many years ago, or maybe it will not explode at all. I mean, these three cases, which was very similar with what happened in Greece. Because or we are going to leave the explosion, or the explosion may have started, but we will leave it after, or we will never leave anything like explosion. I don't know. And then, so that's why the seesaw, it's to demonstrate that the situation is super unstable. And when we think that we are going from this part, then suddenly something happens and we go from the other parts. And the political speeches was the moment, some moments, because also we had the same problem. We had to cut 30 minutes and we didn't know what to choose and what to throw. And so this that we pick is the speeches when we thought that the humanity thought that, oh, something will change, or something is changing, danger or happiness. It's like, yeah, I think, yeah, well, this is Betelgeuse. And now I don't know. We have many questions. If we need to explain the words that we hear. I mean, to tell the people this is Che Guevara, this is Thatcher speaking, this is Reagan this is Khomeini turning back. We don't do this. In Athens also we didn't do it. And the text in Greek is because well, the text was in Greek. Now, maybe we need to translate here. We didn't do it. It's, well, this about the Betelgeuse.
Super. Thank you very much. Is there someone wanting to say something? Any comments, feedbacks, any questions? No? It's me then? Okay. Oh, sorry, didn't see you. Your pullover is black.
Hello. I wanted to ask why the use of circus and aerial rope in the show, and if the choreography and the routine in the rope had any sort of significance, or why?
Okay. Well, look, the company, it's a mixture of dancer and acrobats. So some things, you know, well, like bodies, they are standing with weight on the seesaw. Some bodies, they can suspend on the seesaw, but okay, it's not exactly on the seesaw, but without weight. So the man in the rope is another one in the seesaw, only that it's not exactly on, up, yeah, up. Yeah, but it's in the world of the seesaw somehow.
Congratulations for the performance for yesterday. I particularly love the compromise of the performers and also the way of moving. Did you all study in the same place or where? And then about the characters, who are they? And why the costumes? Are they randomly elected, or are they? Could you tell me about something about the characters? What are you thinking the performance? What your character play in the performance?
Yeah. Well, first, where we study, we are 3 dancers. One musician, he didn't study at all. No, we are dancers from the school of dance, I mean dancers. And Christoforos is acrobat. Well, I'm half a dancer, I'm a dancer, but also acrobat somehow. Like acrobats, we don't study in Greece because we don't have any school. We try to find out what's happening alone. I mean, we improvise to be acrobats. It's, yeah. And no, εντάξει, also we communicate with the rest of the world. I mean, yeah. Now, some moments during the show, some of us, we are doing a character, like I'm doing a conservative woman, yeah, but in this moment, because in another moment, I don't do this part. It's the character, they appear only for a few minutes. This action of Tassos putting the... it's only a moment that we present the character. Then he goes out. It's only the body. And the costumes only to try to defend this moment of the character. I mean, I use the thing. Tassos was using the... Hermes was using this like... sorry.
What do you mean? It's fine, it's fine. Understandable.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes, I'm present sometimes in the show the pure guy, I mean, and that's it.
We didn't see that moment in that show.
We
that's
didn't.
Why the costume.
But yeah. I had the costume, but not the icon. Yeah.
Super, thank you. Is there anyone wanting to add something?
Just to pick up on that point about the why of the rope. I think maybe, because it's interesting to hear you say that about the seesaw, because now, on retrospect, that's really like a really lovely thing. But I think maybe the presence of the rope kind of blocks that metaphor a little bit, because for me, it made me see the seesaw as more of just another bit of apparatus to use, rather than like a key metaphor like that. So maybe there's something, I don't know, in when is the rope introduced, or it being there from the start? Yeah.
Yes, I a bit agree with that, but in the whole version, the rope is not at that point of so we try in this version, because she starts doing the Thatcher part, and after somehow she passed through me and Tassos, and then she goes to the rope. So we... Yes, this is my...
Yeah. Originally, the rope exists with a trapeze, another apparatus aerial. So it's a rope and a trapeze, and with the seesaw, you understand, like, there are two bodies in the air. When you see, they are up in the seesaw, but now maybe it wasn't so clear, yeah. Yeah.
So maybe I'm the only one, but visually I like the rope very much, because that, yeah, yeah, it was this, horizontal and vertical kind of lines, and there was this one moment, you were first on the rope, very strong, and then you took it over in a very different way, and I think this, for me, it had something like the Cecil. Again, like the dance on this one. And I personally enjoyed it that you chose to use live music. I think to use or to work with political issues is not easy at all, and it's very fragile. And the live music is more fragile, and also that you sang and did the cover song. And then there was this moment when I was so happy when you grabbed the mic, and I thought, oh, now this cool lady, this cool dancer will sing, but you didn't. And it was, and it was great that I didn't get any satisfaction. It was good, and your dance was very inspiring, because there was always this moment. This guy with the blonde hair, there is always this turn, now he goes wild, but not really, and I think this was always on this Cecil kind of thing. I liked it. I like that about it.
I just want to mention that we only use live music in our shows for about 10 years, I think, now. We like that a lot. Also, he has a costume in the show.
Yes, I saw that too. That was good. And I liked it that he was that you could see that he's part of everything. Also because of, yeah, of course, because of the instruments. And also it was the only, besides you at the end, it was the only voice speaking to us, not on tape.
I really loved it, and I felt like there was a lot. There were several metaphors going on in the piece. There was the idea of the danger and the instability and fragility you talked about, and I was feeling that in a very physical way. It was very exciting to feel my body in a process of alarm, of being, worried and scared for you, and seeing the danger, and obviously you were controlling that perfectly, but I was still feeling very, very activated by that. But I loved the rope and the seesaw and the choreography. I felt there was something very coherent, because for me, it was about the Thatcher text and the idea of hierarchy and height, and the gap between people, and the constant shift of going down and then above and below someone, and this notion of we measure how well we're doing according to how high we are on an arbitrary scale that's about being relative to others. And yeah, so there was a lot happening there in that piece, a lot of elements all coming together to say something quite powerful politically about how we measure ourselves against one another. And that seems like a really important thing in a European festival as well, where we all think of ourselves as different individuals, but also different countries with different economic problems or different levels of things, you know. And yeah, I thought it was really interesting. The one thing I wanted to say as a tiny critique is that because it was so open and powerful and resonant, the metaphors, do you necessarily need the very literal moment of the money moment? You know, that for me was a bit less poetic or something. I don't know.
Yeah. It's the yes, it's the same. Yeah, it didn't work yesterday. For us, it's one part, one scene that we didn't show of the big one, of the big version, because this usually they are chocolate money. And we, in the explosion, they are covering because they are gold, and then we eat. I mean, it's a scene. But yesterday was only, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that sounds really nice.
Usually it's golden coins, but it's chocolates, and there is an action with that.
Well, but yeah.
It was a last part that never happened. You know, it was a scene about 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, the last scene that we didn't have the time to make it. So we just used the corns, make the big explosion, and do the crisis thing, and make the finale, you know.
For me, I just want to say that I enjoy a lot the performance. I felt very attractive because I felt it in my body, like Mike says, the metaphor with the size with the balance. It's very, very, very make you think in a lot of so poor people, rich people, a balance. Fragility of the society. I liked a lot that moment that you say that when the sentence of these people who could change everything for the bad or for worse, no? It's a pity because there is a lot of sentence, and it's difficult to choose which one. And in this election, maybe sometimes you tell one thing or another thing. This is very delicate, but I love it, and thank you very much.
I'm sorry, if we're done, I wanted just in public to say that I also loved your show. I said already to him, thank you very much about your show. It was really moving, and I say that because I feel that we are living in a world of entertainment, and that was something different for me. Thank you very much.
Okay. Is there anyone wanting to say anything else on the show? Maybe we were talking with Miguel, that maybe we can finish the talk about your show, translating the text you said in Greek in the piece. Like we would like to hear the, yeah. if it's possible.
Well, no, okay. Well, yeah. No. I'm
I mean, if you want to translate into Spanish,
I'm ready. I was trying to tell it.
You've been preparing.
Because I was trying to tell it in English, but it was like the party with Peter Sellers.
Yeah, please. It's also a short version.
Yeah.
And also it's short version.
No, the short version. Yeah, because of the material. Well, short version is that one supernova explosion is when the upper class of the star they pressure the middle class, and then the middle class of the star they suppress the down class. Yeah, and then the down class, it's going boom, and then all this explosion goes until the upper class, and then the star disappear. Well, this is the explosion. But when the crisis was in Athens and all these things, sometimes you need to look up to see the biggest image of the life. I mean, that we are going to die, that the life is this, and that we have a dream of living and all these things. And not only to focus, if you have the money to, or what about the insurance and what about the jobs, and to be able also to, so in the end of it's the third part of speech, this end one, and it says that we die many times during a lifetime. The cells, they are all new, the body, it's all new. But the present of our experience creates new selves to defend the idea of the stable I. But all the others, and we are immortals made of a material of the explosion of the star. I mean, all our material in the body, it's coming from there. It will pass the idea of the form, and it will go until the end of time, if end exists. I mean, we will die, all our material, they will be something else, someone else's will be us, and all these things will go until the end. It's something like, if end exists, this is the favorite, yeah. Well, sorry about the English translation, I know it's...
It's perfect, I mean, I think everyone got that, so thank you very much. And now we are going to talk about the last piece we saw yesterday night, Obnimashki, yeah? And from Anna Aristarkova, which is the choreographer, that's not here, but she's going to be on telephone.
Yes. And
Miguel? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm one of the dancers, and Anya is currently... Oh, well, we're kind of...
There with Miguel, and she's going to be talking to us through the speakers.
Exactly. And maybe Miguel can give me a sign when he's ready. Ah, yes. Okay. So she's in Berlin at the moment. We created this piece a year ago, and it was part of her graduation from the study program MAC at the HZT in Berlin, which is a place where you can study, among other things, choreography. And... yeah, we've been performing that piece in...
Yes, hello. I mean, the connection is not super well, but yeah.
Hello, Anya, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I'm on a microphone and people are going to ask us questions about the piece. That's cool. Very nice.
Anna, do you want to introduce yourself or say something about the piece before we begin with the questions?
Yeah. Okay. I am Russian. Probably this is one of the reasons why I am not there. So you're talking to me on the phone. Yeah, I was a dancer for 17 years, so I danced professionally. And I did my master's studies in choreography, and I graduated in October in Berlin. at HCT. And so Obнимashki, the piece you have seen yesterday, it's a part of my graduation masterwork.
Super. Thank you very much. Spasiba. Is there someone wanting to say something to the show? Any comments, any feedbacks, any questions, whatever?
I missed your shows as well, and as much as I've heard about the shows now, I was very happy to see the first one. It makes me just as emotional about not having seen the others, so thank you, nevertheless.
Okay, Anna. Anna?
Yes.
Yeah, super. Because I'm leading the Feedback Cafe, and I'm like, you know, I have access to the feedback postcards. People write during the shows, so I have read what people said more or less about your show. Okay, and I'm gonna try to transfer some of these questions and some of these thoughts to you. Now we have you on the telephone, and we have the luck to ask you the questions directly. So, your show, I find it quite curious that your show provoked very extreme reactions. You know, like people liking it very much, saying, I love the show, it's the best show, whatever, and people don't like it, like, and saying, I don't understand, you know, like being really, taking huge distance with the show, and I didn't find any medium, you know, because that's normal, that's with every show. People liking that, people don't liking that, but there are normally medium positions. You know what I mean? And in your show, there was no, I find a lack of this kind of medium positions, and I find that interesting, you know, like to ask it to you. What do you think about this? I mean, do you think it has something to do with your dramaturgy? You wanted that? Did you expect that or something? Don't like that. There's only medium positions. You know what I mean? And in your show, there was no. I find a lack of this kind of medium position. And I find that, you know, like, but what about this one? What I mean, do you think it's something to do with your dramaturgy? That's a great idea. No, it's finished.
Sorry. You hear me, Miguel?
Yes, we hear you.
Yeah, did you hear me? No. Technical problems.
I mean, in the meantime, I can maybe say that we've never had such a positive response from any audience so far. This is the first time that during the instructions, for instance, at the beginning, I've had to wait and see when the buzz will calm down or how we use that moment. It's maybe, well, for sure it has to do with the festival. It's a cultural thing for sure as well, though, because I feel a British audience is way quicker to jump on the bandwagon than a German audience is. And also depending on the type of festival, we were in the Performing Arts Festival a few weeks ago in Berlin, and that had a very different audience as well, so it was so nice and rewarding, and this is so very egotistical to say, but it was so rewarding to get this response and so unexpected that gave us a push in the beginning of the piece, and I think it influenced the rhythm as well, so what you saw yesterday was extraordinary also coming from
Yes, hello, now we are connected.
Hello, can you hear us now?
Hello. Yes, now yes.
Super. So did you listen to me? No, you didn't listen to the question I throw you before, did you?
Look, the thing is, it's a bit difficult for me because like it's really hard for me to understand the parts of the question on the phone, so I'm trying to listen in the same time online, but I think online it's a bit delayed.
Yeah.
So, as I understood that the question was about like different reactions on the show, but I'm not sure that I understood correct. So maybe if you could repeat the question, this would be great.
Yes, of course, of course. We are aware of the technical problems, so it's fine. I was saying, yeah? Yeah. Okay. So, again, I'm between the mic and the phone. I hope this works this time. I was saying that when I was reading the feedback postcards, you know, some postcards we give to the audience here, and they write down the thoughts of the shows they're watching. I found for your show something curious, or that seems curious to me, that there are, like, in every show, there are, like, positive comments, people loving the show, and negative comments, people not loving the show, not liking it that much. But there's also, like, a medium range of comments. You know, like people saying, yeah, okay, this is good, but this is bad. But in your show, there's a lack of these medium comments. You know, it's like all people loving it, but really loving, you know, like saying, this is the best show I've ever seen. I love that. I want to do that all the time. I love people hugging me. And also some comments like, this is very strange. I don't get a thing. I don't think this is art. You know, like very, with huge distance from the, and I find that incredibly interesting. You know, so the question is like, did you expect that? Did you, that was something planned somehow in your dramaturgy, or are you surprised as I am with this? How do you feel about that? Whatever thoughts you can give us from this subject.
Okay, so just to make sure that I understood you right, so you mean that for the show there were also like very different range of comments, right? From people liking it to
Yeah. Like, why do you think it gives so extreme reactions? You know what I mean? Like, oh, loving it very much, or not liking it at all. You know, like not people saying, I like this, but I didn't like this. You know, like taking a medium position to us. And I think that's interesting. Like, no medium positions. No one was like neutral, you know, after watching your show.
I see. Well, I have a feeling that most of my work somehow provokes similar reactions. And it is also quite an interesting topic for me. Like, I'm thinking why, but also I have to say that this particular show of Dimashki is so alive, so every time it's very different. So for me also it's a bit difficult to say something how it was yesterday because I didn't see it. I have heard from my wonderful team that it went quite well, so I trust them and I'm very proud of them. But I cannot really say what exactly happened yesterday. Like, this is difficult for me. But I could imagine, like, my theory would be in general that I think I really do enjoy to break the rules. The different codes in contemporary dance, in aesthetics, and I think I'm just very curious to experiment a lot. And I can imagine that some people maybe who have a certain image of dance or what contemporary dance is, they could get maybe disappointed with what I offer to them. I mean, this would be my theory, but still it's really hard to tell if this is the reality or not.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone wanting to add any comments, any thoughts, any Miguel?
Yes.
Yeah, it's coming a comment.
So yesterday, it was very interesting, the selection of the shows yesterday evening. It was very different. And before your show, there was a show with a very political issue, and I loved that one. And then it was a great contrast. And I think when I left the theater yesterday, I had to invent new points for you. The audience had the chance to give points for the shows. And for me, it wasn't enough. So, yes, I was maybe one of the extreme reactions. I liked it how there was no fear of being ugly on stage. There was this really annoying Euro trash music in the beginning, and there was this moment when there were it was called Now 5. And the girl with the brown hair, then she always distanced herself. So it was so fine and delicate how they had a look, or how it has a sharp view on these daily relationships, which are usually considered as being boring, or but it was very refreshing.
You're really bad, to be honest. I could not understand the half of it. So if you could maybe give me a little insight, this would be lovely.
Any other comments?
Yeah. Yes.
No. Okay. If there are no, it seems that there are no more comments around here. So I'm gonna read you. Maybe it's even your feedback, the one I write down here. I don't know, as you say, like or no. But there was one of the feedback postcards. There was a comment that I found especially interesting, and I think that's one of the main points of your show I would like to highlight here, and that's why I'm gonna read that. So, and there was someone saying that he or she liked the show very much because the performers were not ashamed of nothingness. You know, and I like very much that idea, because in the other side of this one, like not liking the show, there was someone saying like, there is no text, there is no choreography, so I lose my interest, you know? And in this other side, there's someone saying they really like, and I'm more on this side also, like, but it doesn't matter, it's not my personal opinion, you know the point, but I just wanted to read this, like, not ashamed of nothingness. I found it quite beautiful in some way. Do you
not
think
ashamed of what? Sorry, this I didn't understand. Not ashamed of what?
Of nothingness. Of like.
And of nothingness. Wonderful. Yeah, this is lovely.
Yeah, it's quite lovely. So did you want to have like fearless performers or in your show?
Well, I don't think it's possible to have fearless performers on stage. But I have to say that, like usually, if I'm talking about the piece, I don't like so much to talk about the topic of hugging, but rather about the structure of the piece, because I really appreciate seeing thinking people on stage. So I'm not so interested in performers who learn the steps and who can perform them perfectly. But rather, I'm very curious in working with decision making, and I think very often I try to encourage my team to decide or to make new decisions every time they perform the piece. And if once something worked out, to try not to repeat the same thing next time. And this is very fragile, very tricky approach, because of course sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And the piece is now exactly 1 year old, and I think also, like yesterday, original cast performed, and we have different casts for this performance. And I think they have a lot of experience, and they really trust themselves also to take decisions and not to be scared, because they know that they cannot basically predict what is going to happen. This is one thing. And also concerning timing, I think it's very minimal, and like there is not so many things happening. And you know, like I'm a big fan of John Cage, because I think he always said that when he composes music, silence is important as sound. For me, it's exactly the same in dance. So dance is not only movement, it's also moments of nothingness, it's also stillness, it's also pauses. And for me, there is a balance of 50% of movement and 50% of nothingness. And I'm always curious, how can you put it this way, timing-wise, so it doesn't become boring? So it's still nothingness that communicates.
I think it was quite clear, like everyone gets the point.
Okay.
Super. Is there anyone here wanting to say anything else? Yeah, we have a comment here. Come here because, if it's a question, she needs you to be here. He's coming.
Yeah. Okay.
Between the microphone and the telephone.
Since you're on the phone, hello.
Yes. Hello.
I just wanted to say, yeah, I thought your work as a director was really amazing, how you allowed all these individuals to be on stage and to remain as individuals, but also a great company of people to watch. And I think that's a real skill, and that's something that we talked about afterwards, is whether how much of it was devised by the company. We didn't think to begin with that there was a director behind this, but the more I think about the piece, the more I understand actually all your decisions, and I think I think it's really nice to be able to see a group of individuals like this in their clumsiness, but also, their individual beauty.
I'm very happy to hear that, what you're saying. Thanks. Because then apparently you could really see individuals yesterday on stage, and this makes me feel very happy.
Okay. Yeah, it's quite technological, but it's fine. It's been very funny here, like with the thing with the microphone and the telephone and everything. Is there anyone else wanting to say anything? Yeah, is there someone? Could you come here, please? Between the microphone and the telephone. Yeah, they need to come here, so it takes
Yeah,
some
I'm always
seconds.
happy when I hear your voice. Then I feel connected again to the situation.
Hi. It was a little bit touched upon earlier, but I was interested to know what were the sort of different reactions for the show in different places that it's been performed, because it felt quite dynamic in the way the relationship between the audience and the performers on stage. Have there been lots of different reactions to the show?
Yes, very different. But I mean, we showed it many times in Berlin only. So, for example, also I'm aware of the fact that in Germany there is a problem with lack of touch. This is a social problem, and I was really interested, okay, so what will happen if people are gently invited to participate in the show, though me, myself, I'm really not a fan of participation when there is a show. So we had very different reactions. I think sometimes people would really participate and hug and be really involved, and sometimes really not, like sometimes people, there was like a wall between performers and spectators, and they turned the piece into something completely different, of course, because audience plays a very important role in there. Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Is there someone else wanting to add something?
Yep.
No. Okay, so thank you very much, Anna, for being here somehow with us through the telephone. And
Oh, thank you. That's a pleasure.
yeah, it's been very nice to talk to you and having you here, even like not in real presence. And that's a pity you didn't get the visa. Whatever.
Yeah, well, in my heart, I'm there.
Yeah. Super, so thank you very much. Thank you very much. See you.
Yeah.
We're clapping for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we go on to the last, piece and visual art work. So it's a combined thing. So Kristina, yeah. Should we begin with? Yeah, that's what I was gonna make. Like, it's tricky, but you like try to talk about the show without making too much spoil. Like there's people not like, but yeah. Yeah. Yeah, super. Thank you.
So how much do I introduce if somebody hasn't seen it?
Sorry. So British Enough have kind of two strands. That one was a video installation that is done by Kristina Cranfeld, and that was kind of the origin of the whole thing. So I think it's good that she give a little bit of context about the piece. And then, if you feel that it's good for you to talk a little bit, it's up to you, John, to explain something. If you want to explain how you develop further the idea of Kristina, start a site-specific performance just for the festival. So, is that okay?
And it could be up to people who haven't seen the show, like leaving us, you know, as they want, like to, or whatever. I don't know. Yeah, they try not to spoil the thing, but maybe you prefer not to have any information before, whatever. That's like, yeah.
Yeah, but so yeah, manufactured Britishness. That's the original piece that I have developed quite some time ago, and it really has been inspired from my own experiences coming to the UK. Well, I'm actually Russian as well. Well, I'm half Russian and half German. What was interesting that I'm very proud to be British, and I know that it's much harder to become British nowadays. But long time ago, when I became British, I went through that journey, and one of the aspects that all British citizens has to, well, all the prospective British citizen have to do, they have to pass Life in the UK test. And I suppose this was really something that I start looking within my work, really deconstructing the idea of the test. Is it possible to actually test people to become someone else, to become British or German or Russians, or is there such a thing? So that's why I've developed, after a year research. Some of you who has seen the piece, they could see the flags, for example. There are 10 Union Jacks flags, or what it's at least supposed to be. And I had much more. And this was just one of the research that I was doing, asking people to draw for me the Union Jack. And this is one of the questions in the test. As you can see, the results were really different. Also, within, I don't know how much have you seen or how much shall I give away, but the piece itself, Manufactured Britishness, actually purely based on Life in the UK test, and all the tasks that migrants are doing. What I was doing is literally taking something that is written and I was interpreting it into something physical. And once I started doing it, it became really absurd, the idea of actually the test itself. And this work really, it's a provocative piece that aims to really ask who defines at what point does one can become any citizen, who makes these rules, and who decides. Yeah, and then afterwards, in collaboration with John, we decided to make an experience. And John, maybe you want to say a few words about it?
Yes, so I've known Kristina for a while. I've worked with her before in other projects for her films, been a fan of her films for a long time. And we had a conversation about how we developed the work based on the Manufactured Britishness film, which is an incredible piece of art. So for me, it's a big question at the moment, Britishness and what makes a person British. So it came at the right time for me because I've been very engaged in my own work with Brexit and so on and so forth. And we have for our company, this is Lucy, Teresa and Claire. So yeah, it just felt right. So I took the idea of manufactured Britishness and I thought, well, what happens after if we reach that point that we are in the film where we're treating people like they're a commodity? Where do we go from here? If that's the worst, how much further bad can this get? So I thought, well, 70 years after that test you see, what would they be doing? And I just came to the conclusion, after just talking about this with Kristina, and through rehearsals, that probably if they're testing people and it's popular and Daily Mail and all these different organizations get hold of that they'd probably find a way for this to become an entertainment product, for people to be engaged in the testing, the same way that it is almost in the Daily Mail now and other media things where they're making judgments on people and it's become a form of entertainment when you read the paper. So for me, it was looking at the worst case scenario. How would the aspects of being British be forced upon people, but not just, also obviously for migrants and immigrants, and it's been a big question for our company because Teresa's from the Czech Republic and we've got other people, it's not only about being British for people from other countries, it's about being British for me, it's about being British for people who are poor, who are on benefits, who are put into this thing of how they have to attain Britishness. So I came up with the idea was that, together with Kristina, that this 1970s to 80s was a period where we seemed to have all these crazy game shows where people would, engage in this kind of entertainment. And you had people like Jimmy Savile and all these kind of characters that at the time you thought were great people, but have turned out not to be quite so great. And I thought, well, that as an idea, that kind of trying to manifest British again in the idea of the test in our piece, if we put the audience through that, if we allow them to experience that in a very pure and quite dramatic fashion, what does that mean for the audience? Where do they stand on the experience? Where are their boundaries? And really, in its simplest term, it's literally taking Kristina's piece as the foundations of the work, and we developed it into British enough as a question for the game show. It's like, are you British enough? Can you become British enough? What will you do to be British enough? And that's what the audience experience in the work.
Thank you. Thank you both for your presentation. Is there anyone wanting to? Yeah.
Thanks. But yeah, based on some of the things you just said, I'm not sure in terms of what was intended or not. In terms of the timeline, in terms of the date of you see this piece, the entire piece, because a majority, for me, the majority of the references towards Britishness are quite, I would say, antiquated references. They're not necessarily contemporary references. And as it's meant as a critique of this Britishness, I wondered how deliberate and what was the thinking behind using, a very, I would say, a very old-fashioned idea of what Britain is, as opposed to something else,
Yeah, I think that's about the generation, an older generation in our country that, for me, from being British and knowing the older generation, that has this inherited racism, and their time and their upbringing is very much of the period that you experience in the piece. So in the worst case scenario, if that becomes dogma for the people, then it's almost, and if you, again, if sorry to keep picking on the Daily Mail, but it feels appropriate, but if their form of thinking was writ large on a people, what would that feel like? That you had to go back to this time that was from the 70s that was quite horrific. There was these awful game shows and these sitcoms and this kind of fake way of being that was not, it's a good way, a good place to grow up in one way, but in another way it was really, I don't know, it just, I never felt connected to it. Even though I grew up in the 70s, I hated that period. I don't feel British. I don't know what Britishness is, really. So yeah, it was a very purposeful choice to pick that period because I see that as that generation, that's their time. And if they could manifest it, I feel like they would. They'd want that all to come back.
Can I just add? And if just to add to what John just said, for example, when we were thinking about what type of tasks or actions they will be doing, it also was inspired by the actual test. So if you actually look at the test when it has been just introduced, and I think it was in 2004, There were questions that concentrated more on daily life. Then another test has come out, which was a second edition. It removed daily life and added, I remember this is like extra chapters on employment and everyday life needs. But then the third edition has come out in 2013. And funnily enough, they have removed most of that information and added a lot of traditional values, which is now sort of, which is to be believed like critical for us to integrate it as British citizens. So it's really, we are, if I may say so, it's almost like consciously we all go kind of back to the traditional values, and that's not only within the piece, but actually within the country. And that's sort of a critique to that as well. Yeah.
I think I would just say, I would argue, and again, this is just my opinion, if you believe what you read in the media, and if you believe what the political establishment, etc., and you believe in the monarchy, then absolutely. But I don't believe that large swathes of the population of the UK actually do believe that. I'm just, you don't know.
Yeah, sure, but it's almost, it's actually the first journey that because that piece was particularly, of course it's been experienced by British people, but when you're a migrant and you have to go through all these almost ridiculous stages, this is where the criticism going towards to. They don't teach you how Britain is a great country, and myself being lived here for a long time, 13 years, I'm proud to be British, but there are also things, I think, if we depict them and if we provoke, and something that is still needs to have some questioning, then hopefully we can achieve even better by questioning and by provoking.
Ooh, sorry, quickly, that reminded me, the biggest thing I came out of seeing it was I'd really, really love to see the whole piece in kind of village halls in rural communities around the UK. That was my
That's
thinking.
a great idea. Fantastic. Can I just pick up on one of the points you said about that? I think it's a fair point about the Britishness and about, because I'm very much, I guess we're the same ideal about how things are. For me and Claire had an interesting idea, because within FP we're similar mindsets, and we reached a point with it where, especially after Grenfell and things that were happening in the country with the attacks in London, where we thought, just hold on a second, are we, because we were so conscious of not being racist about any other group of people, we were like, are we being racist about white British people? Is that a thing we need to be concerned of? Is that possible? And we had a conversation that was quite interesting, because, you know, I was quite proud of my country with how we responded to Grenfell and things like. I was like, yeah, this is what being British is. We come together. We have that, and I recognise that from my mum. But I do think, and I agree, I take your point and I agree with it, but I do think that you only have to walk into a Waitrose and you know, again, it's making a massive value judgment, but you see those people with, you know, white hair, and they've all got their Daily Mail, and they're all ingesting it, and you just have to listen to snippets of conversation of what these people believe. Even my own mum, who was the most beautiful person, was a Christian. She lived next door to a lady who was Asian her whole life, but she still had that level of inherited racism where I'd go to get the chips, and she'd go, don't get them from the Chinese chip shop. And it's like, it seems to be in English people, or British or white people, that when we're on our own, not everyone, but it's just bubbling. It's just bubbling.
Yeah. No, I agree. It is there. Yeah, and it has to be discussed. Yeah.
Sorry, it's just a kind of minor point. I haven't had a chance to see the show yet, but it was just picking up on what you're saying. It reminded me of a couple of years ago in the Bull Ring. I got interviewed quite randomly by a couple of young Utes who gave me an interview about my knowledge about British history, kind of random things about Britain, and I was quite curious about this. It emerged after question 2 that they'd been set up by The Sun. They'd been sent up by The Sun newspaper to test. And this was obviously, it wasn't news, it wasn't, you know, it was all designed, it had a political end to it. They'd sent these guys up to the Bull Ring in the middle of the heart of, you know, multi-ethnic Birmingham, to pick people out, to make people fail. And this, so I was being a pawn in a way, in this instrument designed to fail people. And I got every question right. I knew I was able to correct their questions because their questions were phony. And so I could add additional information. They hadn't got a clue about they were both white English themselves. But I answered it, and they said, nobody's ever answered all the questions correctly before. But my point is that those things are designed to fail people. They're not designed to show how British you are. They're designed to show how un-British. And it strikes me that that's really at the heart of a lot of the issue around, well, for me, about Brexit. It's about being able to identify the other. It doesn't really matter what the other is. In this instance, there's a clearly defined other has been identified. In a world where you're not allowed to really identify colour and race anymore as the other, because political correctness makes it difficult, suddenly a referendum gives you the option on selecting an other. And I think, you know, I think what you're talking about, the issues here are very interesting. It's not about, you know, illuminating a merit. It's about identifying who's not in.
Does anyone want to add something?
I have a very, very quick question because I also haven't seen the show, so I can't unfortunately comment about that side of it. But I just wanted to pick up on something that you said, where John, where you said that you didn't feel British. I was wondering whether, I mean, this is a completely hypothetical question, so it might not even be possible to answer, but whether you feel that you would feel differently if it was taken away from you. For example, I was born as a European, but I will no longer be a European once we leave Europe. And I think I probably feel that more strongly in its potential absence than I did when it was taken for granted. And if you would know, if your British citizenship was taken away from you, do you think that would make you feel more British?
Well, after Brexit happened, I was so horrified and upset that when all the conversation came up about Scotland splitting from England, I was like, my dad was from Paisley. I was like, right, that's it. I'm absolutely gonna give my passport in, and I want to become Scottish because I want to keep my access to European Union. I believe in the European Union. I know there are people in my family that fought to end World War II and to have this European Union and to have this organisation. So I believe in it fundamentally. And also in my own work and my own life, I feel connected to the stories of England. I feel connected to the history, as we were talking about earlier, like what I see England as, or Britain as. I think I have connection to Albion. What that means as a mythic archetype, and that no one can take that away from me because it's a story. Whereas the British thing is very constructed, very manufactured, and I would happily, you know, I don't have any connection to that. So, you know, it may be if it was in such a way that, you know, my family was punished and it was stripped of us because of some other reason, I would be upset. But all I can say is I feel genuinely horrified how people have behaved who are British. Some people, and I've heard, you know, conversation happen that I don't know that I want to be associated with those people anymore. I don't know if I want to be British. If other people can't, if people that I care about that are like sisters to me can't be British, I don't know if I want to be British.
I'm sorry because I'm a bit lost about the question, because we are talking about being British, and I think if you're a migrant and you need to enter into a country, you don't want to be British, you want to have rights as a citizen. And yesterday for me, I didn't understand anything, because you put in my body a desire that I don't have, and I don't have. Immigrant people has it. They only want to have rights, and that's it. So then the whole sequence of being British, and it's something for me very secondary. So it's I don't know. I don't think it's important. Or yesterday for me in the show, for me it wasn't important at all.
Yeah, I mean, this piece is incredibly polarizing. So some people are going to hate it for many reasons, and other people may love it. But yeah, I think you're right. Rights are more important. But what if your rights were dependent on you proving you are British enough? If you have to prove that you understand what the 70s are in Britain and that what Daily Mail readers believe are important, and what if your rights are based on their ideals? And I think that's what the piece is. Maybe we didn't achieve that 100%, and absolutely. But for me, that's what the piece is about, really. It's about that, like how would anyone who's an immigrant come into the country understand about this weird period of the 70s? And as a piece, that's something that's come up. So during the test zone sections, without giving too much away, it's really interesting that English people get the humor a bit more, and people from other countries are like, this isn't funny. I don't even get this. Do you know what I mean? And I get why that is, and that's quite... But I would hope it works in two ways, in the fact that you not getting it is the point. It's like, this means nothing. I mean, I don't understand. And then the English people are like, this strange, weird humor. So that kind of context of it is really what it's about. But I do take your point.
But can I just quickly add is that your comment is exactly perfect comment to somebody who, in that dystopian world, somebody who should not be given British citizen. Because all you want is rights. But all that world wants you is to be purely British. You have to strip your identity. And that might be where we might be going. And that's how I felt when I went through that journey myself, going through the test, and I had to swear my allegiance to the Queen. It was absurd. And I don't feel British at all. Yeah, I love my rights, and it's been fantastic 13 years. But it's exactly the question is, from those, let's say, dystopian authorities, are we worthy of that? If there are too many people like us who don't value it really for being British and actually only having rights, can we actually have them? So that was a good one. It was a good response.
Yeah, but I think it has to do with changing the subject of the theme, and this I find it very dangerous, because now we are talking about feelings, you know, like, and I think it's a very concrete thing. I mean, the right to be in one place, the right to move, and I think we end up talking about colors, flags, feelings, so I don't know. You know, I mean, the point, that's the point, finally. And I don't know, I find it that we are all the time talking about other things, yeah.
Can I say something directly responding to that? Because I'm half English, half German. I have a British passport. I never did anything to get that passport. I'm just British by birth, and that's it. So what Germans always, on the other hand, my mother, who's lived in Germany for ages, behaves very British outside of England. One of the things that she used to mention a lot when I was a child, that you don't have to declare your residency in England. Like, it seems that the discrepancy here between the rights that you have as a British citizen by birth and the rights that you have before you get any kind of British citizen, that the discrepancy between those two states is big. In Germany, we have this same discussion going on as well with like the Einbürgerungstest. My mother has a German passport now. She applied for it just after Brexit. And I think there's several layers to this. It's what's at stake. My mother applied for a German passport and she didn't have anything to lose yet. So she was like, yeah, sod it. I'm just going to answer all the questions. Yeah, sure, I share German values. She's lived in the country long enough to go like, whatever. Once I have the passport, I'm as German as any German can be because I've lived here long enough. She has that She has the ground that she can stand on. The question is what happens when people don't have that and they're exposed to that kind of situation. How degrading can it get for the rest of the for the rest of the population who's watching that, to go like, wait a minute, who's defining these rules? And this is the big question. Like in Germany, there's a big movement going on. We're having discussions about who claims the myths, who claims the founding national myths. Like you've got to, at some point, and this is something that I, as a German, would really love to say, just leave the Britishness behind, because at some point you're going to have to stand up and say, look, I'm British and you're not my nation. I'm in this boat. And I don't share your views, so since on paper we're both British, let's have a discussion about how you think you can shape the public space that defines who you and I are, not just to your benefit, but also to other people's benefits. So please don't forget about that, because in Germany it's really hard. I have the feeling that at the moment we're galloping behind people who are taking several stories and shaping them according to what they want them to be. And as artists, we're used to moving about a lot and used to being very relaxed about lots of things, but maybe also now, and this is what I think I appreciate about the dimension of the way you work as well, is to give people a kind of a wake-up call and go like, yeah, discuss, do, and yeah, be less polite maybe.
I also like to directly respond to yours, because I really think that you're right, because yeah, I often forget that maybe the main interesting thing would be that we finally should have something like a basis right to have rights without any nationality. And so far it's still always in context with a special nationality, that I have the rights, and if I don't have it, or if I lose it because of war or whatever, then suddenly I'm out of any kind of rights. And so I think it would be really, really good to find some way to finally have these rights, and I don't mean the human rights, because you lose them in case of a very weird national dynamic. I mean something above that, yeah. And so I think everybody should be very there should be a lot of self-esteem to claim the basis right for rights.
Also in regards to, I had the same feeling. When in the piece, I just didn't really care if I passed the test. But I think that's also coming from a very privileged position, that I'm an European immigrant in the UK, that I still can go about doing my own things, that there are many immigrants here that can't. And I think what was lacking for me in the piece was I wish that I felt that I was being tested and could be maybe humiliated or could be frowned upon for not being British enough. And I didn't feel that as strongly. So I think in that way, it could have maybe gone a step farther to put me in that position, to take me out of that position of privilege that I am at the moment. Because there are many people that are immigrating, and that Brexit means that they are losing homes, that they are losing family, that they are losing careers and education and years of living here that will mean nothing. For me, that I haven't been living here for that long, didn't put me in that position. I would like to have been that uncomfortable, that I had to feel that this is maybe a reality that we will have to face in years to come, to be graded to how many spoons of sugar do you put in a cup of tea, or do you put milk or not? And because it may come to that, and that's really sad, and that's something that we will have to think more about, I think.
Yeah, did you go downstairs? Did you get taken downstairs? Okay, so the people who got taken downstairs had that happen to them in a way. So the trip to the village fete for certain people, they have to engage in a situation without giving too much away, that hopefully what you describe I felt was tackled, in that it becomes quite dangerous and quite unsafe. And the questions they have to answer are very personal and very and that there is that real risk. So the piece, there's various sections you experience, depending on where you go, and it's the same with our work all the time, is depending on the experience you'll have. So, and with specifically this type of site-specific work is that we've got 2 areas to work within, and the type of story is we can only allow access at certain times and in certain ways, so that does limit it. So that's a fair point, but there is that area. Okay.
I would like to say a pair of things. One of them is related with your piece, which I must say that first of all, my level of English is not so Shakespearean as your high level of, I suppose this is also intentional in order to manifest that that makes the first difference, no? So you speak, in a way, the people coming from abroad, in many of the cases, doesn't have this level of speaking English or understanding, and the test is the same story. And but I have noticed, and your piece reminded me of that, because before coming here, I have been all of my life very ignorant about United Kingdom or England. I know many things from history, from the English Empire and what George Soros did to the pound and things more like conspiracy theories or history, but I didn't know very much about the real problems here in England. No? So I've noticed there's some kind of, especially with Brexit, some kind of people, progressists or young people or people against this kind of, like German people against, German people when remember of the Nazis. Here you're now like flourishing some kind of shame about being the British Empire, and now it's like Brexit did re-emerge.
Absolutely, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, am I right?
100%.
Okay, so it's just an impression I had from outside.
I'm really glad you had that impression, because it is for me, that's what it's about. It's about this generation that's a bit older that feel like because of Brexit, it's their time to seize back what that empire was and to reclaim it, because they've never really, I don't believe that certain level of British people believe it's ever gone, that we still focus on our mind like that. And I think it is a really dangerous time where we're leaning towards conversations that are verging on fascism, and that you could see taken far enough that could become very dangerous. So really pleased with that comment. Thank you.
Another thing I'd like to say, and forgive me if I say something politically incorrect, but I see very, very, very emotional people when you talk about Brexit, and it's like very, very polarized, against or favor, but most of the justifications or motivations of your personal posture, and it's like if you are in favor of Brexit, you belong to some kind of people. If you are against Brexit, you belong to another kind of people, and we all know left, right, extreme right wing, extreme all empire. So I must repeat, I'm an ignorant of what Brexit really means. I suppose you...
No, I think you probably understand more than a lot of people.
But think also that coming from Europe, being a member of the European Union, I would be aware again, I would be aware of what being European could have been and what it is. Because European Union is not a democracy. It's a dictatorship, and with capital letters, because we are not ruled by democracy. It's the European Commission who dictates everything to the countries and to the central banks, the Troika. This is not democracy. And I know it's weird to say this in this context, in this festival, but I think it's necessary also to reflections in this way.
I know that a lot of
to
people,
permit the doubt.
I think that's a big part of the whole Brexit thing, is that and it's interesting to hear your opinion about the EU, and that there are a lot of different people have different opinions about this organisation, and they're so contentious in terms, especially in this country and obviously elsewhere. So it's not, I don't believe, obviously the EU is far from perfect, but I think what it was based upon when it began was hopefully a higher ideal in terms of how many people lost their lives in the Second World War, and that where it started. And us choosing to leave it, or wanting to leave it, has unleashed this, like almost like a boil of poison here. So even though the EU maybe isn't perfect, us choosing to leave it has unleashed almost a really darkness within Britain.
Yeah, thank you.
I think it's really important what you say there about the polarizing effect of Brexit, and I think one reason for this is the way that Brexit was portrayed in the media here in the run-up to it was intentionally like this. This is like a deliberate, divisive tactic, and then certain groups of people get overlooked. So yeah, so you get split into very left-wing want to stay, very right-wing want to leave. When of course there are the inversions of both of those groups. So there are left-wing liberal people who are critical of the European Union, and there are right-wing conservative people who would prefer to stay in as well. And these people have been rather overlooked. And I think the way we've ended up with this polarization in a very simplified general sense is the way that the event of Brexit has been hijacked as a political tool by people in our country. It's been being used for a specific gain, and that gain is where the polarization of right-wing, left-wing has come into it, I think.
I mean, sorry, can I just add something there? It's a bit like in choreography sometimes when you go from, and this is a stupid comparison, I know, but it's like this discussion that you have sometimes when you're like in version 2.6 and everybody goes, but no, in version 1.0, and everybody's like, no, but that's not where we are. I mean, technically the European Union came from the Europäische Gemeinschaft, the EG, and that was an economic association. Now it seems that people are having this big discussion about what it meant originally, and instead of building a new base. And it's interesting because I'm wondering if now British people are going to grab the chance that's right there to just go like, okay, well, if we don't like whatever we think constitutes the base, we need to speak about how we can make a new base. And I don't know about NGO situations here, but I'm very curious to keep watching what's going to happen next also. Because I mean, I couldn't believe it myself when I saw how they voted, but then I'm like, okay, that's how they voted, but it's like discussing marks over with teachers when you get your reports. It's like, no, it's done. It's really, that's the vote. And unless you want to discuss how democracy works in a country generally, like this went, how do we get so no, but I mean, honestly, this can be a huge chance. It's great that this is getting moving. Just, yeah, then let's hope that we can all, me as well as a British citizen, give enough input for people to go like, okay, if we don't like what we had, let's build something new and build something that will last.
It is just one interesting point because, I understand that. I think that there is one point that it's very often being overlooked for me, from my personal perspective, because I have lived in Great Britain for over 10 years now, and it's not just the aspect that I am now made to question myself, because until then I was absolutely happy being originally Czech, living in Britain, and I didn't feel the need to identify myself. Oh, am I now more Czech, or am I now more British, or should I do I need English passport? I have never really felt the need to have British passport, because I felt organically to be part of the country and loved, the aspects that are very unique for this country. And what was very curious for me after Brexit was the response very often from people that actually voted to leave, where, well, we want control of our borders, but I think you will be okay. You can stay. It's like, well, but hold a moment. That's my decision. It's also the kind of, pre-assumption that, if I say it brutally, everybody desperately wants to be British, And it's like, I absolutely love Great Britain. I do. But it also makes me question some things, because in a way, you know, I am Czech, living in Great Britain, and it's what I am. And I don't need to or feel the need to become anything else. And also there is the question, it's like, you know, where is the point as a foreigner? Because you start to actually feel foreign in a country that you made a home in a really long period of your time. When is the moment that you will say, well, you know, every relationship, even with the country you are in, needs to be two-way relationship? And suddenly, if you are the one that, you know, you feel you are giving but not receiving, then it becomes an unfunctional relationship, and it's a part of it as well. I don't know if you saw, there is actually also a kind of new kind of word that is being used, and it's Brexodus. And it's actually from a lot of Europeans saying, well, you know, we will not be where we are not wanted because we have more opportunities. You know, we don't have only the opportunities to be in Great Britain or be home. We can go anywhere else. And I think that it's, you know, somehow that it's sometimes being forgotten that actually it's also very much our decision what we will decide we will do. So it's just this kind of, you know, curiosity about, yes, we want the people we don't know not to be able to come to Britain or stay in Britain, but we know you, so you can stay. And that's quite a contradictory feeling as well.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. We are like, yeah, we're closing this discussion because it's late and the festival has to move on. But we invite everyone to go on with the discussion, like in more informal ways, like, yeah, and to see the piece and Kristina's work, and because the piece is still going on. So like, and to go on with the conversation, because that's what we really want with this discussion panel, not to finish all the topics here because it's not possible, but to create the seeds for new conversations. So enjoy talking about this, and thank you very much everyone for being here and sharing your thoughts on everything. Yeah.